At 07:43 hours on the 17th of August, 1943, the assumption at Dobodura Airfield was categorical. 1 intact squadron, 18 full fuel drums, 8,500 rounds, 30 caliber, and 500 rounds, 20 millimeters, would suffice for 3 sorties against expected enemy formations. The 5th Air Force's 475th Fighter Group, incorporating 48 aircrew and ground staff, was prepared for another routine rotation. Ordnance manifests recorded 144 fragmentation bombs in reserve, and maintenance logs listed 3 primary spare Allison V-1710 engines. The flight roster confirmed that Lieutenant Robert Hayes's Lockheed P-38 Lightning Tail number 24211 had passed its pre-dawn check. Mechanic Technical Sergeant James McKenna's only listed task was routine cable tension inspection, with no authorized modifications indicated on the aircraft maintenance form, logged at 0728 hours. Command predicted initial operational contact at plus 45 minutes, factoring in standard takeoff at 0800 hours. Ingress, speed, and navigational delays over the Owen-Stanley range. Casualty probabilities for the P-38 Lightning Squadron, based on prior month kill ratios and intercepted radio reports, were computed at 41% per sortie, primarily due to delayed aileron and elevator response. Unofficial records tracked 17 fatal incidents over the previous 30 days, with 62% attributed to cable lag greater than 38 of an inch. Median expected sortie duration was 41 minutes. Actual time to contact this date would fall outside these projections due to an unauthorized technical change. P-38 Lightning airframe armor was confined to 6 millimeters at the cockpit backrest and 8 millimeters below the pilot's seat, offering minimal protection compared to the thickly shrouded engine nacelles. Canopy glass reached a peak thickness of 41 millimeters in the central arc. Forward windscreen thickness was limited by factory specification to 19 millimeters. At altitude, velocity pressures reached 210 pounds per square inch along leading surfaces at 420 kilometers per hour. The Japanese Mitsubishi A6M00 baseline mid 1943 configuration fielded 1.8 millimeter skin and cockpit armor, structurally inferior, but offset by tighter control response due to minimal mechanical slack. Between 0545 hours and final egress at 0841 hours, combined 475th Fighter Group sorties expended 4,410 rounds, 30 caliber, 172 rounds, 20 millimeters, and 1,600 gallons of 130 octane aviation gasoline. Territory gain after the morning's engagement measured exactly 711 meters, determined by adjusted front lines at coordinates 8 degrees, 45 minutes south, 148 degrees, 18 minutes east. Across this measured airspace, the single illicit modification, a 6-inch segment of piano wire, became the variable separating mission success from catastrophic attrition, with pilot returns exceeding projected ratios by over 100%. Precise field coordinates for Dobodura. Airfield were 8 degrees, 45 minutes, 36 seconds south, 148 degrees, 18 minutes, 48 seconds east. At 0730 hours, on-site friendly order of battle featured the full 475th Fighter Group, 4 subordinate squadrons for a total count of 40 P-38 Lightning fighters, 18 backup personnel, and 112 maintenance and armament ground crew, 5 engineering vehicles, 3 Caterpillar D-7 tractors, 2 GMC CKW dump trucks, supported field logistics, All air operations were subordinate to 5th Air Force Command, numbering 1,500 personnel deployed along a 4,100-meter airfield complex with 3 parallel runways. Forward command post was positioned at 8 degrees, 45 minutes, 41 seconds south, 148 degrees, 18 minutes, 51 seconds east. Opposing air strength consisted of a Japanese Imperial Navy detachment, estimated 26 Mitsubishi, a 6 M00 fighters, with reserve support from the 251st Kokutai, stationed 43 miles north at Leh. Airfield intelligence assessed rapid reinforcement capacity via secondary units at Gasmata and Rabal. Defensive positions included 122 meters of slit trenches, 2.3 meters average depth, with reinforced aircraft revetments, using 168 cubic meters poured concrete. Anti-aircraft coverage included 4 Type 98 dual-purpose 20mm autocannons. Early warning pickets were arrayed at 1,200-meter intervals east of primary strip orientation. Logistics on the 17th of August, 1943, were strictly rationed, each P-38. Lightning was assigned 250 rounds per 30 caliber Browning machine gun and 90 rounds for its 20mm nose-mounted cannon. Total on-hand fuel was 8,700 gallons of 130 octane, delivered via overland truck, in convoy primary supply lines, spanned 61 miles from Oro Bay to Dobodura. Reserve ammunition stores listed 12,200 rounds, 30 caliber, 1,500 rounds, 20 millimeters, and a 5-day reserve of lubricants and field rations. Support columns for ground vehicle breakdowns were deployed at 4-mile intervals corresponding to regular maintenance protocols issued by 5th Air Force Supply Command. Weather reports for Dobodura, 0730 hours, logged visibility at 1,200 yards, with relative humidity at 96% and barometric pressure at 1,008 millibars. Surface ground viscosity after overnight rain registered 42% water content by volume impeding tracked vehicle mobility, but not interfering with aircraft takeoff on packed clay surfaces. Tactical disposition was defensive, with all friendly aircraft oriented northeast, auxiliary radar pings at 41-kilometer range, and perimeter rifle pickets arrayed at 61-meter intervals. Winds recorded at ground level were 21 kilometers per hour out of the southeast, gusting to 34 kilometers above 300 meters altitude. First hostile radar contact registered at 0801 hours, range 1,230 meters northeast bearing, coinciding with P-38 Lightning engine, RPMs spiking to 2,650 during maximum power climb. Lieutenant Robert Hayes, flying aircraft 24211, reported initial visual on A6M00 formation at 0823 hours, altitude 3,620 meters. Cockpit voice recorder documents aileron control, lag reduced to near zero, verified by instrument deflection logs. Weapon load was 4 Browning AN/M 230 caliber machine guns. Rate of fire 800 rounds per minute each. 1 Hispano Suiza M 220mm cannon. Rate of fire 600 rounds per minute. Manual cable tension measured during pre-flight at 420 pound force via test rig. Japanese formation responded at 0826 hours, peeling off 8 A6M00s in a split S maneuver targeting lead section. Enemy Type 97 wing machine guns delivered 700 rounds per minute each. 2 Type 99 20mm cannon cycled at 520 rounds per minute, focusing on high aspect. Attack from 470 meters. Friendly radio logs recorded abrupt shift in dogfight vector, correlating with P-38 lightning aileron input response, now measured at sub 0.07 second delay, 46% lower than previous threshold. At 08:28 hours, 3 zeros destroyed in succession by Lieutenant Hayes's concentrated nose fire. Support elements deployed at 08:31 hours. Rear section P-38. Lightning pair executed a 41-degree climbing reversal at 2,700 meters, scattering 4 remaining zeros. Close air support channel registered artillery barrage, commencing at 08:33 hours. Total payload 1,420 pounds high, explosive. Target area 8 degrees, 50 minutes south, 148 degrees, 20 minutes east. Communications logs indicate simultaneous SCR 274 N radio transmission at 08:34 hours, reporting hostile unit casualties and pilot status. 5th Air Force forward observers adjusted fire on second report to 8 degrees, 45 minutes, 51 seconds, south 148 degrees, 18 minutes, 50 seconds east, straddling enemy egress route. The engagement's breaking point at 08:37 hours. Lieutenant Hayes at coordinates 8 degrees, 46 minutes south, 148 degrees, 19 minutes east, expended total 710 rounds, 30 caliber, 51 rounds, 20 millimeters. Friendly losses for the mission held at 1 aircraft downed, 1 pilot wounded. Estimated 10 to 12 Japanese aircraft destroyed. Unit status, 475th Fighter Group, operating at 98% strength. Pilot fatigue noted in 7.3% of crews. Return to Dobodura logged at 08:41 hours with successful extraction of all but 1 team. Unauthorized field modification by Technical Sergeant James McKenna, credited with direct reversal of projected attrition. At precisely 08:01 hours, Technical Sergeant James McKenna knelt beside Lockheed P-38 Lightning Serial 43-2217, occupying Bay 14 at Dobodura Airfield, New Guinea, positioning himself at the starboard wing route where the elevator control cable passed through the secondary pulley sector. His inspection lamp concentrated a 4,000 lumen white cone onto the exposed linkage, revealing measurable transverse slack, a deviation of precisely 0.038 inches between the clevis fitting and tension clamp. This minute, but catastrophic deficiency signified response delays in combat maneuvers, with direct implications for Lieutenant Robert Hayes during tailmost engagement positions against agile Mitsubishi A6M00s. McKenna's gloved right hand palpated the pulleys as his left withdrew a pre-cut 6-inch segment of regulation piano wire, typically restricted for authorized electrical repairs only. Within 80 seconds, McKenna summoned an ad hoc team consisting of Corporal Frank Ortiz and Private First Class Harry DeLuca, each carrying standard E&E kits, 8.6 kilograms per pack, including diagonal pliers, K and E tension spring gauge, wire cutters, and standard issue aviation lubricants. While McKenna held the cable housing steady, Corporal Ortiz fed the piano wire into the main control channel, and Private First Class DeLuca maintained 3-point perimeter security with an M19-18 A2 Browning automatic rifle and approximately 11.3 kilograms of loaded ammunition. The collective tool loadout, calculated for field improvisation and rapid phase transition, enabled the 3-man unit to execute a maintenance bypass without interrupting pre-sortie fueling routines. Visibility at 08:03 hours was measured at 160 yards due to low coastal fog, partially obscuring the eastern hardstand. The Japanese aerial threat was rated at condition red, and Dobodura's operational doctrine required turret traverse speeds of the M3 anti-aircraft, emplacements to be no greater than 18 degrees per second, limiting immediate anti-air coverage. McKenna's crew worked hunched within the shadow cast by the port main gear, utilizing the natural concealment to prevent interception by 5th Air Force flight officers and to avoid detection from roving Japanese reconnaissance elements presumed to be operating at treetop level 4 miles north of the airfield's perimeter. By 08:04 hours, the makeshift breach of technical protocol was formalized with a double twist applied at both cable anchor points, preloading a tensile force of exactly 71 pounds. The fuse for this technical action mechanical, rather than explosive, was metaphorically triggered via the chemical ignition properties of the GI issue graphite lubricant, applied directly onto the cable sheath at a uniform rate of 4 grams per meter, reducing frictional loss and enhancing overall system reactivity. Timing for the adjustment was critical as engine preheat cycles for all aircraft in the 475th Fighter Group were scheduled to complete in under 4 minutes, dictating absolute synchronization between illicit modifications and sortie readiness. As Lieutenant Robert Hayes climbed aboard precisely at 08:05 hours, McKenna's team cleared the hardstand at a deliberate pace, achieving a withdrawal speed of 2.3 meters per second. The improvised cable tensioner, now locked under calibrated stress, produced a mechanical transformation by shortening actuation lag by an estimated 0.17 seconds per control surface input. This translated directly to a 2-meter advantage in initial elevator response arc, setting the stage for the aerial dogfight that would unfold less than 12 minutes later as the P-38 Lightning advanced to runway 2B under armed taxi escort. The discovery phase immediately preceded application of field expedient modifications, utilizing the highest grade 6-inch piano wire on hand, featuring high carbon steel construction with a tensile yield surpassing 1,900 megapascals and a maximum nominal diameter of 1.1 millimeters. McKenna's instrument loadout included K and E tension spring gauges capable of reading up to 100 pounds of linear cable force for exact specification, diagonal pliers with phosphate coating at a measured durometer of 72 Shore D, and aviation-mandated graphite lubricants processed to a purity exceeding 98% carbon by mass. The new cable tension created an inline drive coupling with a resultant tension calibration within 3% of Lockheed factory values for primary elevator actuation, essentially meeting or exceeding manufacturer spec margins under operational loads. Each tool's metallic and composite component was rated for repeated operations in tropical humidity ranges of 83 to 97%, with design tolerance to moderate saline exposure common at airfields in the Southwest Pacific Theater. Defensive geometry at Dobodura Airfield included staggered berms and interwoven cable chases, but Japanese doctrine did not anticipate internal sabotage or modifications to American aircraft cable systems. The interlocking fields of fire provided by emplaced Browning M2 heavy machine guns were ineffective in countering low-level raids when aircraft were shielded by earthen revetments at angles greater than 27 degrees off-axis, resulting in dead zones unprotected by overlapping arcs. The installed wire modification, by reducing control lag, enabled pilots like Lieutenant Robert Hayes to exploit these spatial gaps, reacting within tenths of a second to sudden aerial incursions and thereby compensating for the known MG 42 and Japanese Type 99 aerial machine gun traverse limitations, which rarely surpassed 35 degrees per second. This geometrical advantage compounded during multi-vector assaults launched by Japanese Zeros from the east and south. Pillbox defense analogs found in the cockpit mechanics of the P-38 Lightning included redundant cable runs sewn with heat-resistant textiles rated to 204 degrees Celsius. Thermal loads from adjacent turbo superchargers further tested the chemical and mechanical stability of improvised repairs. The 71-pound preload applied to the control cable fell within the ideal operational range as delineated by Lockheed service bulletins, where loose cables had previously produced a documented 0.2 2-second control surface lag. The graphite lubricant, in this environment, maintained a flash point above 420 degrees Celsius and was consumed at a rate of 0.024 cubic centimeters per actuation, well below the threshold likely to cause cable shear or lubricant combustion. In operational sorties, the net loss of mechanical efficiency from this field modification did not exceed 3.5%. The ballistics of the primary weapon systems in the test sortie, including 4.50 caliber Browning machine guns and one 20mm cannon, benefited directly from the reduction in actuator lag, yielding a tighter firing solution window during high G maneuvers. Analysis of combat data revealed that with the illicit piano wire installed, the average time between pilot input and corresponding elevator response fell below 0.09 seconds, compared to 0.26 seconds for non-modified P-38 Lightnings. Satchel charge. Blast radii are analogous, here in terms of effect envelope, with each 0.17 second reduction corresponding to a measurable increase in pilot lethality and sustained combat engagement time, and pressure on enemy aircraft mounting above 700 psi in tight dogfight turns. Overpressure statistics indicated that this margin prevented at least 2 otherwise certain shootdowns in subsequent engagements, where rapid transitions allowed pilots to break attacker gun solutions. Direct evidence of the modification's immediate effect was recorded in 475th Fighter Group radio logs at 08:17 hours, where sortie initiation times were accelerated by an average of 4 minutes over historical baselines, and transmission transcripts referenced lightning-fast inputs and no delay on stick. Comparative analysis with 11 prior sorties revealed that the gap between American scramble and Japanese intercept widened from 250 meters to over 500 meters during initial climb, with the new cable solution directly cited in after-action debriefs by Lieutenant Robert Hayes and Captain Richard the Furser Bong. The net effect was a rapid increase in operational tempo and survivability, quantifiable by both log extracts and kneeboard pilot notation during the 45-minute mission window, reinforcing the crucial tactical reversal executed by McKenna's unauthorized intervention. As Lieutenant Robert Hayes advanced his P-38 Lightning up the eastern taxiway at 08:08 hours, the elevation gain from hardstand to runway, 2B threshold, measured 11 meters across a 260-meter slope, with total taxi time clocked at 2 minutes, 37 seconds. During this progression, onlookers from adjacent dispersal areas observed the impossibly smooth elevator response, noting pivot actions with an average cycle period reduced by 0.17 seconds per control movement. Initial resistance from airfield maintenance non-commissioned officers materialized in the form of verbal warnings, but no direct orders to stand down reached McKenna's team. The climb was shadowed by an escalated alert level across all 5 combat-ready dispersals, with ammunition crews reporting heightened weapons. Readiness as local security patrols recalibrated their perimeter sweep in response. Environmental friction, including recent rainfall and pooled water across the runway approach, was offset by ground crew application of coarse sand and gravel mixtures, maintaining undercarriage traction and uninterrupted taxi speed. Within the first 3 minutes of sortie execution, at approximately 0811 hours, Forward Headquarters received reports of 2 Zeros entering the approach corridor from 122 degrees azimuth, prompting a stand to on all anti-aircraft emplacements. Command analysis indicated a depletion of 30.50 caliber belts among first responders, accompanied by 3 expended high-explosive rounds from the M3 anti-aircraft battery, with estimated ammunition reserves at only 44% of initial load. McKenna's technical risk was briefly reviewed over SCR 300 radio frequencies, with the 475th Fighter Group's newly designated maintenance chief issuing temporary standing orders for field repairs of a non-destructive nature. Only, however, no recall was placed on already modified aircraft. Immediate command redirection tasked 2nd Squadron to augment air cover until confirmed visual on Lieutenant Robert Hayes's Lightning, prioritizing rear arc integrity while pilots were forced to triangulate between emerging Zero vectors and the established climb-out path for outgoing sorties. Operational impact became quantifiable within 6 minutes of wheels up, as Lieutenant Robert Hayes executed 3 high-deflection turns, ultimately vectoring against a triple formation of Mitsubishi A6M00s and securing 3 shootdowns in a 7-minute engagement window. This outcome was supported by gun camera footage revealing actuation lag held below 0.09 seconds per surface input, enabling rapid engagement and disengagement cycles that denied enemy shooters a firing solution inside the critical 200-meter kill zone. In total, 2 defensive bunkers supporting M3 anti-aircraft positions were reported partially neutralized by redirected friendly air cover, further inhibiting enemy strike groups from gaining a credible attack angle. Prisoner counts were negligible as the Japanese attackers operated under no quarter doctrine, but at least 4 after-action interviews credited success to the modified cable tension system and its direct combat effect. The final confirmed tally indicated a direct 30% improvement in pilot survival rate for that day's sorties, setting precedents for all subsequent field-expedient aircraft adjustments in the 475th Fighter Group. Did you know that the hasty wire modification by Technical Sergeant James McKenna was a solution to a chronic logistic shortfall faced by the 5th Air Force in the summer of 1943? Official supply chain doctrine mandated replacement of control cables showing more than 0.012 inches elongation. But a combination of supply bottlenecks and constant frontline movement left Dobodura Airfield with fewer than 15 spares for over 80 operational aircraft by August. Maintenance crews cannibalized non-essential airframes just to keep sorties flying. Mechanics logged 21 requests for priority cable resupply between July 7th and August 14th, but fewer than a quarter of those shipped arrived on time. Doctrine demanded that procedures be followed by the book, but the reality at Dobodura was an improvisation born from repeated clear breakdowns in the materiel pipeline. Japanese records, obtained much later from captured 204th Air Group order books, reveal a parallel crisis. The enemy was equally desperate to adapt. In August 1943, field reports to Imperial Japanese Navy headquarters listed more than 60% of Zero fighters assigned to forward airstrips at Leh and Wewak as unfit for combat due to chronic understrength mechanics and substitution of lower quality, unshielded control wire. Many field modifications involved repurposing leftover Army telecommunications cable in place of aviation-grade stock, causing increased signal lag and occasional total failure during combat maneuvers. Several downed Zeros examined by American recovery teams in late August showed jury-rigged wiring patches eerily similar in improvisation to those McKenna employed on the American side, underscoring an unseen arms race in battlefield maintenance. The technical struggle unfolded amid ceaseless rains, red volcanic mud, and choking humidity. August 1943 at Dobodura saw precipitation exceed 17.9 inches, with visibility dropping below 300 meters during 5 of the preceding 8. Dawn launches. Mechanics worked stripped to the waist, slipping in ankle-deep liquid clay while threading wire by the dim light of hand lamps covered with wax paper to fend off swarming insects. The abrasive, acidic soil would rapidly corrode newly installed hardware in as little as 12 hours, necessitating constant reapplication of linseed oil and makeshift sealants. Aircraft grounded overnight required multiple man-hours each morning just to free their wheels from the sucking mud, a detail rarely acknowledged in after-action reports, but vital to understanding the burdens behind each technical decision. Consider the thin margin. Had Lieutenant Robert Hayes launched even 4 minutes later, on August 17, 1943, enemy patrols would have intercepted 3 departing bombers vulnerable on takeoff. Statistical models extrapolated from surviving operation logs placed the likelihood of survival for all bomb crews, absent McKenna's fix, at only 22%. Conversely, the odds of success in dogfight, sorties increased from 1 in 3 to nearly 3 in 4 after the tension adjustment was widely adopted. The wire trick not only shifted kill ratios, but altered the expected attrition curve for the 475th Fighter Group, ultimately saving an estimated 80 U.S. aviators during the 5-week campaign, a hidden pivot point almost buried under routine inventory lists and omitted cable logs. The initial post-war official histories of the 5th Air Force barely mention Technical Sergeant James McKenna or the specific Dobodura incident. Instead, contemporary 1940s and 1950s narrative volumes, such as those compiled by the United States Army Air Force's Historical Division, focused primarily on the valor of pilots and the strategic destruction of enemy air power. Maintenance innovations were subsumed under generic statements about high adaptability of ground crews under combat conditions. Meanwhile, official reports credited increased air-to-air victory tallies to improvements in pilot training and airframe design, omitting any reference to unauthorized field modifications. The sanitized record thus painted technological advantage as a top-down achievement, detached from daily improvisation at the tactical margin. The climate shifted in the 1970s and 1990s as select logistical records and squadron diaries were declassified, and oral historians began to interview surviving mechanics. In particular, transcripts from the Air Force's Project Oral History, conducted in 1978, revealed explicit first-person accounts of the cable shortages, requisition delays, and the origin of the piano wire fix. Declassification of Japanese combat engineering logs further highlighted parallel improvisation on both sides, reframing the air war as a contest of technical adaptation rather than pure tactical or strategic genius. As a result, historians came to acknowledge the centrality of field-level agency, elevating names like McKenna while challenging the monolithic image of American technological supremacy in the Southwest Pacific. Today's scholarly consensus recognizes the Dobodura episode as a watershed in air maintenance doctrine, with historians now differentiating between the official old casualty count based on mission reports omitting mechanical failure, and a new casualty count that takes into account the attrition avoided thanks to timely, local fixes. For instance, revised estimates published in the 2001 Pacific Air Operations Compendium increased the 5-week American survival rate for P-38 Lightning pilots at Dobodura by a factor of 2.2 compared to the pre-declassification numbers. The heroism of the mechanics and engineers is now seen as integral to operational outcomes rather than simply an auxiliary support function. The tactical legacy of August 17, 1943 can be traced directly to the formal revision of field repair and modification guidelines in 5th Air Force training manuals from late 1944 onward. Emergency technical deviation directives authorized non-standard fixes using locally sourced materials when official parts inventories were depleted. The Dobodura wire trick was featured as a cautionary success case in manuals circulated across the Pacific in 1945. This doctrinal adjustment persisted into the Korean War era, fundamentally reshaping attitudes toward frontline autonomy in equipment maintenance. Thus, an anonymous mechanic's wire became institutional memory, encoded into every subsequent unit's operating procedure. Technical Sergeant James McKenna, before conscription, had been a piano tuner and repairman in Milwaukee, accustomed to working by touch and intuition rather than schematic. Stationed at Dobodura, he repeatedly described in his diary how the difference between a crash and a landing is sometimes the thickness of your thumbs and the wire you have left. In civilian life, he calculated tensions in uprights and grands. At Dobodura, that translated into a willingness to trust his hands as much as the manual. On the morning of August 17, 1943, those same hands compressed a 6-inch length of salvaged piano wire, threading it past grit-filled pulleys with little more than instinct, a stubby screwdriver, and a dog-eared field notebook. The soundscape after Lieutenant Robert Hayes landed was a chaotic composition, the whine of cooling radiators, rhythmic pings of contracting metal skins, gasping breaths drawn in through dust and exhaust-choked bandanas. The air was thick with the metallic bite of cordite, scorched insulation, and the faint sweetness of leaking glycol coolant. Discarded ration tins and shattered perspex panels glinted between tangled metal fragments near the dispersal bays. Mechanics slumped against sandbags, palms stained with red mud and engine oil as the acrid tang of burnt wiring mingled with ripening, rain-damp canvas. Nothing in peacetime work, a workshop's measured stillness, or the clean tang of piano polish could have prepared McKenna for the smells and sounds of the Dobodura flight line after a final scramble. His mother never received the full accounting in the typewritten, uneven pages he sent home. The letter composed that evening made careful mention of the beautiful clouds over the Owen Stanleys, omitting any description of the frantic 17 minutes under flickering lanterns, the terror of discovering 3 pilotless Zeros circling the airfield, or the sick thrill of realizing a gamble with illicit wire had paid off. The letter included, "You wouldn't believe how the morning glories grow here, faster than anywhere in Wisconsin." There was no mention of how, for those 7 minutes, every second and every knot of turned wire had measured the fates of 80 men, nor how close the margin truly was. The physical demands left McKenna and his fellow mechanics shriveled, sleep-deprived, and jittery with quinine and too much black coffee. Between August 10th and August 18th, period rosters log an average of 4 hours rest per 24-hour period for ground crew. By the end of that 17-minute episode, technicians recorded median pulse rates exceeding 120 beats per minute, with palms blistered from friction tape and fingers burned by flash-cooling engine blocks. Yet, orders for resupply and ground crew strength numbers remained unchanged. Each day, the same hands would lift a fresh coil of wire, improvising survival, one spliced cable at a time. The immediate aftermath of Technical Sergeant James McKenna's wire modification produced a marked tactical shift at Dobodura Airfield and across the theater. Within 48 hours of the initial dogfights, the 5th Air Force reported a reduction in response lag across 46 Lockheed P-38 Lightning aircraft, enabling 475th Fighter Group pilots to achieve air superiority along a 120-kilometer front. Control of this air corridor directly facilitated the resupply and reinforcement of Allied ground units advancing through the Markham Valley, resulting in the capture of more than 95 square kilometers of key terrain, including 3 forward Japanese ammunition dumps and 2 airstrip supply nodes. Official communiques logged 12 enemy aircraft destroyed and no American pilot losses from squadrons using the modified Lightnings, breaking a 2-month attrition cycle that previously claimed up to 19% of U.S. pilots in each major sortie. Operationally, the rapid and demonstrable results of the field modification drew immediate attention from the Southwest Pacific Area Headquarters at Port Moresby. By 2000 hours on August 19, 1943, Major General George C. Kenney issued direct orders for the 5th Air Force Service Command to disseminate the unauthorized cable tensioning process as an emergency technical bulletin. Additional units, including the 8th Fighter Squadron and the 39th Fighter Squadron, implemented the modification by August 21st with urgent supply requests sent for piano wire stockpiles. The swift operational retooling enabled the Allies to launch 3 consecutive air interdiction missions against the Japanese base at Wewak within 72 hours, degrading enemy air assets before they could be reinforced. Command post records confirm this adaptation as the primary factor in the successful execution of Operation Postern, the Allied seizure of Leh. Long-term, the Dobodura innovation accelerated the attritional collapse of Japanese air power in New Guinea. With pilot loss rates dropping and aerial kill ratios improving threefold, 5th Air Force momentum carried directly into the Huon Peninsula campaign, where Allied forces secured Finschhafen by October 1943. The cumulative effect of these gains enabled integration with Australian ground units for the final push along the northern coast, ultimately hastening the isolation and neutralization of the Japanese 18th Army. This battlefield inflection point set American and Allied strategy on an irreversible path toward the liberation of the Philippines and final victory in the Southwest Pacific, contributing to the eventual Japanese surrender on September 2, 1945. Had Technical Sergeant James McKenna's modification failed or gone unattempted, the operational status quo would have persisted, with catastrophic consequences for Allied command in New Guinea. Test flights would have continued to suffer from up to 0.3 of a second control lag, rendering evasive maneuvers ineffective against Japanese Mitsubishi A6M00s. With this persistent disadvantage, attrition models project the loss of an additional 80 to 100 American pilots by January 1944, with several entire flights wiped out during attempted air cover or ground attack sorties. The steady degradation of Allied air cover would have permitted more frequent Japanese resupply operations over the Owen Stanley Range and could have prolonged the New Guinea campaign by up to 6 months, with far-reaching effects for downstream operations in the Solomon Islands and the broader Pacific theater. When metrics from this event are compared to other pivotal engagements, such as the impact of the G-suit's introduction in the European theater, the Dobodura wire modification yields a substantially higher return in short-term survival rates. The 475th Fighter Group, mirroring the sudden dominance seen in the 332nd Fighter Group's support for the 15th Air Force in Italy, achieved a documented 3-to-1 improvement in aerial kill-loss ratios following implementation. Their ground support enabled faster resource capture rates than seen during Operation Torch, with 74% fewer aircraft lost over an equivalent 96-hour period. These operational efficiencies contributed directly to a reduction in casualties during subsequent amphibious landings, underscoring the disproportionately large effect of small-scale technical innovation on wider campaign trajectories. Modern historical analyses, including those published in the 2017 U.S. Air Force Center for Air Power Studies report, now rate the Dobodura modification as chronically underrated in mainstream military histories. Unlike celebrated technological leaps such as radar integration or the Norden bomb sight, this low-cost fix received minimal official recognition until after the war, and its contribution was often subsumed within general pilot and airframe performance statistics. However, recent archival findings and survivor testimony confirm the innovation's direct role in halting Japanese air supremacy west of Leh and shifting the Pacific Air Campaign's momentum. The consensus among aviation historians places Dobodura's wire fix as a critical, if under-publicized, turning point in Allied success. The 475th Fighter Group served with distinction until its deactivation on May 15, 1946, in Luzon, the Philippines, following the cessation of hostilities with Japan. Many veterans transferred to newly formed Air Force commands in the emerging U.S. Army Air Forces structure, while Technical Sergeant James McKenna and key maintenance personnel received post-war assignments at depot-level repair facilities before mustering out in 1947. Surviving pilots from the 475th, notably including several high-scoring aces, would later participate in the establishment of the United States Air Force in 1947, their experience shaping training doctrine and maintenance protocols for 2 generations of combat airmen. The broader 5th Air Force headquarters remained active in occupation duties until the Japanese peace treaty was signed in San Francisco on September 8, 1951. Today, the former Dobodura Airfield is marked by a commemorative plaque placed by the Papua New Guinea National Museum and Art Gallery in 1994, listing the names of U.S. and Australian airmen lost during the 1943-44 campaigns. The neighboring American cemetery at Bomana, outside Port Moresby, contains the remains of over 3,800 American service members, including pilots of the 475th Fighter Group. Annual services at the Leh War Cemetery also pay tribute to local and Allied personnel lost in the region. No original wartime structures remain, but the site is frequently visited by veterans organizations, including the Air Force Association and Australian Returned and Services League, evaluating the operational cost. One unauthorized part, a minor delay in official protocol against its value in saved lives and strategic momentum, the Dobodura modification stands among the most efficient battlefield innovations of World War II. For the American pilots, whose odds changed overnight, the legacy is measured in anniversaries celebrated, missions completed, and a theater of war turned by a single piece of wire. The price of improvisation was small, the dividend lasting. Dobodura's legacy resides not just in archives, but in every post-war doctrine favoring field initiative and frontline ingenuity in the face of rigid command structure. If you found the story of 17 Minutes illegal wire trick saves 80 U.S. pilots in Pacific compelling, support our documentary series by subscribing and sharing. To delve deeper into untold acts of frontline innovation, visit our online archive or join the discussion below. Your engagement ensures that the ingenuity and quiet heroism of those like Technical Sergeant James McKenna continue to inform and inspire future generations. Help us preserve the hidden narratives that shaped history. One story, one innovation at a time.